right, so we are back in the studio. I've got a special guest. Beautiful thing about having a studio right here at the garden center is when someone really smart comes in, you can interview them. So Chris Shipley came in. He's the owner of Civano Nursery out of Tucson, one of the premier native Southwest xeriscape mix kind of person. So you guys are creating some unbelievable new natives that are coming out.
Thank you, Ken.
Welcome, Chris. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So you are actually, tell us about you, your nursery, and then your growing facility. How'd you get into this? And tell us something. You're a true family nursery.
Yeah. 25 years ago, we drove down from Canada, Vancouver Island, Victoria, BC.
Nice.
Got in our unair-conditioned cars and drove down in August to the desert. And not having air conditioning, Ken's a problem in August in Tucson, let me tell you. And we've been here ever since. So we love Tucson, and we started our garden center in 1999, opened it up, and we have a wonderful garden center. And my two brothers and I were like, well, we can't all work in the garden center. So one of us went landscaping, another one we used to move trees.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, we don't like landscaping, and the tree business isn't as, let's try growing plants. So here we are. We got my dad, my two brothers, myself. Now we're all in the nursery together, but it's 100 acres, so we don't all have to stare at each other like we did on the 3 acres. So my wife's left alone to run our garden center on the 3 acres, so she's doing great. And we've been just working hard ever since, and we started breeding plants. And we have about 20 patents now that are under our command, and bred plants for the Southwest to take our dry, hot, cold conditions.
Yeah. So how do you find or create a new plant? So brand new plant, never been seen before, or it's in the wild and you found it. And how do you find that, then bring it? And now you've got 2,500 of them available for garden centers to sell to local gardeners.
So there's a few ways to get new plants to market. One of the easiest, we'll say, and best ways is just to find better plants in nature. So we actually go jeeping a lot and hiking all over to look for better plants. And when we in 2011, which is we had a huge cold storm. We got to 13 degrees in Tucson. I think you probably got below zero.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
It killed a lot of stuff. And we went jeeping right after to look for some things to see if they'd survived. And one of them was a hop seed. But anyway, we found a lot of stuff through that. And just driving home every day, you just keep your eye open looking for new stuff. My brother was looking the other couple years ago, and he saw a globe mallow that was very different. It was much shorter, much denser, had just a better form of a orange native globe mallow. And he took some cuttings. He always has a cooler in his car and some water and paper towel.
That's amazing.
He opens up the cooler, gets some cuts real quick, puts his 4-way hazards on, and throw them in paper towel, and off he went. And then he started sticking them in the little propagation trays and rooting hormone, and then you grow out a crop, and you see. And we plant it in the ground, we watch it, and then we named it Orange Crush, and here it is at your garden center. And we have a much better, for the average homeowner, for their yards, desert globe mallow that'll actually be much nicer. So the Orange Crush has been a great hit for us, and it will do great in Prescott.
Orange Crush mallows are native.
Yes.
They grow up everywhere, but in the wild, they tend to flop over. They're kind of rangy looking. Your Orange Crush is tight, full, thick, loaded, more flowers on it, and it stands upright even in the strongest wind, and as hardy as they come. Truly a wild flower that you can have in your garden, a perennial that comes back every year.
And in a garden center, for a garden center to sell a plant, it needs to look good.
Yeah.
And globe mallows in a pot at a garden center never look good, so you wouldn't sell many. Now all of a sudden, you can't keep them in stock because it actually looks good. It's everything you just said. It stands tall in the pot, even though it's dwarf. It stands tall, more flowers, and people want it. And if you can get people to want native plants, I think you've won the battle of getting native plants into our yard for our pollinators and our environment. It's just better.
Have you noticed, do butterflies, hummingbirds like that one? Or
bees, butterflies.
Do they? It's a pollinator.
Yes, it's a
Good.
pollinator.
Yeah.
You bet.
So tell us about some of your tree. The trees are fascinating. You're creating new trees. You've got desert willows, oaks. How do you come up with those trees?
Well, one great story is our live oak that we developed called the Joan Lionetti. And my brother was traveling through Texas, and he brought some seeds back. And he sowed up, say, 3,000 seeds. One of the seeds, this was 19 years ago.
Wow.
One of the seeds came up different. And it had a much different shape, a very rounded shape. You could have the oak go small leaves, big leaves, weeping habit, sideways habit, anything but straight habit. It's just so different when you look down your row of plants. But this one grows like a lollipop, kind of. It's much more rounded. It has a bigger leaf, a lusher looking leaf. And it's just a much more responsible shape to plant in our smaller yards. The branches don't get over 4 or 5 inches in diameter. There's a lot of branches, but they're easily pruned if they're going in an offending direction. And we didn't know how to clone it. It took us 10 years to figure out how to clone. We killed 250,000 cuttings.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like shaking my head going, what are you doing? But he finally cracked the code, and we get 90% success. And now we can give the Joan Lionetti to Prescott, to Texas, to Arizona, California. We ship them all over. And it's just a much more responsible tree to plant for streets, municipalities, and your average homeowner.
So it looks like a scrub oak or an emery oak. It looks like a shapely emery oak or native oaks up here in the mountains, but without any maintenance.
Right. No pruning.
It's just pretty by itself, but it's so robust. It's so native that it just adapts. I'd say you could water that a couple of years and then just probably let it root out and then just let it go by itself because oaks adapt so well.
It's an
here.
arid selection of live oak. It was found in the arid parts of Texas.
Yeah.
And it's been a huge breakthrough. We have one of the only cloned oaks on the market.
I've never heard of such a thing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us about the companion to that, the desert willow, because you are famous throughout the country for your desert willows that you introduce. One of our local natives.
We've introduced 3 so far, and the 2 we're really going with are the Sweet Bubba and the Bubba Jones. And these
Bubba, is that like a Canadian term, or where do you come up with that?
Well, the parent tree that we crossed with Bubba.
Oh,
so Bubba Desert Willow
I know.
from Texas
Okay.
has the big green leaf. That's been the missing link to make desert willows popular because they always had a very narrow, spindly leaf with lots of seeds, and it's been kind of ugly. And we cracked the code on beauty on this one. We kept the big green leaf. We put a huge, beautiful deep burgundy flower on it. And then we got it a very nice, shapely shape. It's very symmetrical. And it has 0 to no seeds.
Yeah, nice.
So we've got the trifecta. No seeds, a nice shape, and a beautiful flower that will bring hummingbirds to your yard all summer long.
Easily, yeah. And folks, when you're driving down, let's say Dewey, Spring Valley, that area, up over Jerome, down towards Kirkland, Skull Valley, those trees growing on the side of the road, those are desert willows, a native flowering tree. They tend to be trashy. They tend to put a lot of beans on. Mm-hmm. They aren't that shapely. They're kind of wild looking. Chris at Civano's, his team, his brothers, have put together a unbelievable selection that are beautiful, easy to maintain, and they're just pretty. So, Chris, we are out of time. Wow, thanks for taking just a moment.
Thank you.
And sharing that with us. This is fascinating. So, Chris Shipley with Civano's Nursery out of Tucson, here interviewed on The Mountain Gardener. Be right back after this.